Is it possible that you're in the wrong relationship? If you're a projector, who do you work best with in a relationship? Or a generator, who should you not be in a relationship with? These are questions that often get answered when people are discovering their human design type. So in this video, we're going to look at relationships from a human design perspective, energetically, what makes two people attracted to each other, and what are some things that you might need to be aware of that could create tension potentially. And in human design, there are three components. There's you, there's them, and there's the relationship. And it starts with you. Ra Uru Hu, the founder of human design, said, the very beginning of looking at any kind of partnership is to really understand yourself. At the moment that you're really clear about yourself, then you're going to be much more aware of what's happening to you in a relationship with anyone else. So how do you get clear? Well, what we've been talking about in our other videos in my Human Design 101 playlist, which is linked below, is a great place to start. Getting clear on your strategy and your authority. Following your strategy is the most important because that's how you're meant to interact with the world. So if you're a manifester, you're here to initiate and you want to inform the people around you what your plans are. If you're a projector, you're here to guide and you want to wait for the invitation or the recognition to be able to do that. If you're a manifesting generator or generator, you're here to create. And so you want to allow life to bring things to you and see what excites you, where that drive to create wants to go. And then if you're a reflector, you are here to mirror and to really help us calibrate, not just as individuals, but really as a society toward that better, higher version. So knowing your type and strategy is the first thing, and that's key. Also, if you are a manifester or a manifesting generator, you might feel a bit more independent. Like maybe you don't need the other people as much as other types do, and that's perfectly okay. It doesn't mean anything about you or your ability to have a lovely, long-lasting relationship. Now, you know your type, but you're still probably thinking who works best with a generator or a projector, etc. And the answer is all types can work well together and we're all made to work together well. It's really not about type. In human design, there are other factors which make you have chemistry with someone, and that's what I'm going to discuss in this video. But before we get there, another thing to be aware of is if you are an emotional, which means do you have your solar plexus center defined? Being an emotional, like we talked about in the authorities video, means that you're always riding on this emotional wave. And so being aware of that means that you can let the people you're in a relationship with know, and so they don't have to think that there's something that they did to cause you to be in a high or a low. Whereas non-emotionals, they don't have that background emotional wave going, and so really when they're by themselves, they're more cool, calm, and collected, but they pick up on the emotions of other people and they can actually amplify them. So if you know that your partner, for example, is a non-emotional, but you are an emotional, and you see them get to like a level 10 emotion on something that you're feeling at like a level 4, then you can understand where that's coming from. And really, it's a great way for you to know what it is that you're feeling and to be more aware of that. The last thing to look at in your own chart is your definition. If you're a single definition person, that just means that all of your centers are connected to each other so that they talk well together, you feel complete, you don't feel as much of need to go out there and interact with other people. Whereas if you have split definition, that means there are kind of two groupings of centers in your chart, but they don't connect to one another. So there is a split that's created. Looking at my chart here, you can see that I have these centers that connect and these centers that connect, but there's a split between them. So if I had gate 59, for example, that would bridge the split here. Or if I had gate 16 or 20, that would bridge splits here. So you can see in your own chart, if you have a split and then look at those gates that would bridge the split, and then you can know some characteristics that you might be looking for in a partner. The next piece of the relationship is them. So again, it comes back to knowing their type and strategy, but you also want to pay attention to their not self, which is something that we covered in the video. So if they're a manifester, their not self would be anger. For a projector, it's bitterness. For a reflector, it's disappointment. For a generator or a manifesting generator, it is frustration. And the reason that is helpful to know that is so that when you see them experiencing those emotions, you know that it's not about you. It's really a normal part of them following their human design. And so just even helping them get back into following their strategy and authority is going to help relieve those feelings. And also you want to know their profile. And so when we're looking at profile, this is really a much better way to talk about like chemistry or compatibility than just looking at the energy type. And there are 3 kinds of connections that we can have with profiles. They can be co-equal or the same. This is also called resonant. And that just means when you literally have the same profile. So you're both 1-3s or 5-2s. This means that you experience life very similarly and you will feel very familiar, like you've been friends forever. On the downside, it could start to feel a little bit too familiar, like you might want a little bit more mystery or excitement or difference in the relationship. The second type is contradictory or dissonant. These are profile combinations where there's the potential for misunderstanding. And there's a really nerdy reason that involves the Chinese I Ching and the lines of the hexagram for what makes a profile either contradictory or congruous. But in short, if both of your numbers are odd, like you're a 1-3, a 5-1, or a 3-5, or if both of your numbers are even, like a 2-4, a 6-2, or a 4-6, and your partners are also either both odd or both even, that would mean that you are a contradictory or dissonant profile. And the last type are congruous or harmonious, and they really complement each other well. They're on different paths and see the world slightly differently, but they have the potential for growth and development together. And the congruous profiles are 1-4s, 4-1s, 2-5s, 5-2s, 3-6s, and 6-3s, and then your partner would also have one of those profiles to make it congruous. In human design, the founder Ra Uru Hu has said problems from most relationships are that they were never entered into correctly, and that participants in the relationship don't operate correctly as themselves. So the most important thing then is that you are entering into the relationship correctly. What does that mean to enter into it correctly? Of course, it means following your strategy and authority. So one question I get is about dating if you're not a manifester, i.e. if you're not meant to initiate. So if you're a generator or a manifesting generator, you're just waiting for that physical response. So you might be scrolling through a dating app or something and then you feel pulled towards someone. So then it is correct for you to go ahead and start a conversation. If you're a projector, waiting for an invitation or recognition can feel harder, but it doesn't have to be. If there is some kind of like matching or liking function on a dating app, for example, and you get that like match or like, I'm not really sure how it works, but that could be an invitation. And so then you could have a conversation from that. Or if you are in person, an invitation doesn't always have to be explicit and verbal. It could be like flirtatious banter or inviting body language, and then you could like initiate a conversation from that. And if you're a reflector, this all applies as well. You'll just want to take it really slowly and not enter into a serious relationship until you've given yourself that 28 to 30 days to really understand how you feel about it. Now, let's get into the fun stuff and look at the connection chart, which is the overlap of you and your partner in one chart together. So according to how many centers in this composite chart are defined and how many are open, there's a different kind of mnemonic device or relationship theme that goes with each. So this one is 8-1, have some fun. That means there are 8 centers defined and 1 open. That means that in 8 of these centers, there's a deep connection and common interest, and in 1 center they have open, which is where they can grow and explore the world. If all of these centers were defined, if we had this crown center colored in as well, then it would be 9-0, nowhere to go. And this kind of relationship can feel like you're the only 2 people in the world and there's really no room for anyone else. This is actually the kind of connection that Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck have. So if you'd like me to do a case study on them versus on Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner, then comment below with the words case study and I'll make a video about that. The downside of the 9-0 nowhere to go energy is that there is nowhere to grow. So it can become kind of stagnant or even stifling over time. Now, if we had 2 open centers here, so only 7 were defined, and then we had 2 of them were white, that would be 7-2 work to do. And so this still works in a relationship and you do see this happening often, but it just means that with the 2 open centers, you would need a little bit more alone time, a little bit more space to pursue separate interests. They still have 7 centers which are combined where they can do things together and explore and discover the world together, but then they have 2 centers that are open to other possibilities so that they can explore their own interests and things they want to do. And then if there were 3 open or white centers and only 6 colored in here, that's called 6-3 better be free. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't good together in a relationship. It's more suited to someone who is that lone wolf type who needs a lot of alone time, because of the 3 open centers where you could have very different energies and interests. So that kind of relationship works a lot better when you give each other plenty of space. Also, when it comes to centers, there are 3 centers that are particularly delicious or attractive to someone who doesn't have those centers. So for example, the sacral center. If someone has the sacral center open or undefined, someone who does have that defined is more attractive to them, because that center is the center for life force energy. And so they're always kind of magnetically drawn to that energy. The second center is the spleen. So if you have a defined spleen, but they have an open spleen, the defined spleen feels very safe and secure and like home to someone with an open spleen. So that can be a very attractive quality as well. And then the last center is the throat. The throat is all about expressing yourself, manifesting things on the material plane, and being able to go from idea or desire to action much more easily. And then another thing to note is if you or your partner were split definition, but when you come together in the composite chart, you're a single definition, that's going to be a much stronger relationship bond. So again, single definition means when all of the centers are connected somehow. They might not all connect to each other, but you can draw a single line between the different centers. Now, let's talk about chemistry versus companionship and compromise versus controlling. So those are the 4 kinds of energies that you'll get when you're looking at a connection chart. So first we have companionship channels, and these are talking about channels, but it applies to gates as well. Anytime you have the same channel or gate as your partner, this is a place for common ground, for companionship, for friendship. Chemistry comes from the electromagnetic channels. So this is where you have one gate and your partner has the other gate, and so together you guys get a complete channel. So this is incredibly attractive to us because we always want to complete ourselves and to have the full chart and access to all of that energy. So especially if it's bridging one of your splits, someone that completes one of your channels is going to feel attractive to you. But also, just like a magnet, when you have that electromagnetic channel, you can have not just attraction but repulsion. It's something to be aware of. If you're feeling too much of that, it could eventually be a little bit repelling, or you might need some time and space to yourself. And then we have compromise. So compromise is when one person has just a gate where the other person has the full channel. This means that the person with the full channel is going to kind of overwhelm the energy of the person with just the gate. The solution in this case often is just to agree to disagree. Then we have the controlling or dominance channels. That happens when one person has the full channel where the other person is completely open, so they don't even have a gate there. For example, you can see this 1222 is just orange. So this means that's an area that you can learn from the other person because you don't have any of that energy on your own, but when you're around them, you can feel what that feels like. Another thing you might want to look at when you're thinking about a romantic partnership is what is their ideal environment. So if you're both caves people, it's going to be a lot easier to make a home together than if you are a mountains person and they're a valleys person, for example. And if you want to know more about your ideal environment or your profile or anything else we've talked about, you can get a custom reading from me at viewfrig.com. And before you go, I want to leave you with the 2 most important tips for improving a relationship. Number 1, you want to honor your strategy as well as theirs, which you can learn more about in this video. And number 2, you want to follow your authority, which you can learn more about in this video. And I'll leave you with a quote from Ra. Knowing their design allows you to stop being a conditioning force that's a negative in their lives. So I hope you learned something useful from this, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Also, remember to like, subscribe, and see you next time.